Philippians 3:13 from the Amplified. One thing I do, it is my one aspiration, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal. This was my devotional reading the other day. It was reminding the believer, me, that I have an adversary that is working against me. It was encouraging me to stay focused on the goal and refuse to quit until God's promise becomes a reality. To not be like the children of Israel after God, through Moses, delivered them from Egypt. They got distracted. See, after God delivered them from Egypt, the children of Israel would complain about something instead of just asking God. Then God would answer their need and they would be loyal to God for a little while. Then they would complain about something else instead of just asking God. God would answer that need and they would be happy for a little while. Then the people would contend with Moses. Then Miriam and Aaron murmured against Moses. Then the people spoke of choosing a captain and returning to Egypt. What? Then they turned against Joshua and Caleb, ready to stone them because they wouldn't join them, but instead stayed focused on God's promises until God's anger was raised against them. Miriam was punished. They were delayed from reaching the promised land, and after 10 times, God had to punish them, and all the generation except Joshua and Caleb. All the generation except Joshua and Caleb were prevented from ever seeing the promised land. But the Israelites doomed themselves. They acted as spoiled children who were never satisfied, even when they got what they cried for. Then, as they acted like brats, got mad at the good children, Joshua and Caleb, because they were being good and not bad, and then tried to hurt them to the point where they got themselves into trouble, got themselves not only hurt and killed, but because of their actions, had the promised gift taken from them and held until the remaining complainers died and their children grew to adulthood and received it instead. They tried to play the victim with God and lost out. Minister Jerry Savelle said in volume 1 of his minister's manual that, quote, they refused to take thoughts and their words captive, unquote. It wasn't the heathen nations that defeated them, but they did it to themselves, lost focus, and focused on the wrong things when they had the God of the universe overseeing them, leading them to a promise and willing to answer all of their needs as other nations saw them pass before them with the reputation of having defeated the Egyptians. This devotional not only reminded me to be aware of strife, but reminded me that becoming critical in the midst of God obviously moving in your life and all around you can cost you the anointing, the promise, the blessing, your future, and your life. And without these things from God, one cannot reach one's goals, find fulfillment, or anything. With that, I'd like to remind you during this pandemic, be careful of murmuring against God when He's providing for you, protecting you, encouraging you, watching over you, His children. He takes it very personal. Be careful to thank Him and worship Him for all He is doing in your life, because it could be much worse. And maybe He's even waiting for you to thank Him for what He is doing before He gives you the other gifts and blessings He is holding behind His back as He watches you. Don't you remember this one lesson when you were young? Uncle Junie comes over to your house to visit, and you're excited because he always has something good for you. So he comes in the house, you run to him, jump in his arms, and give him a big hug. He kisses you on the head, puts you down, reaches into his pocket, and pulls out a crisp set of $1 bills and gives them to you with a big smile on his face, happy to give them to you. You look at the $2 bills, and in spite of the fact that you haven't received any money from anybody, mom, dad, big mama, pops, or even Aunt Cookie, in weeks, because Christmas was just last month, you instead remember the $10 Uncle Junie gave you on his last visit. You look at him and say, "Hey, Uncle Junie, couldn't you put at least 1 0 behind one of these bills?" He smiles at you, pats his pocket, and says, "Oh, yeah, let me have that back." You hand it back to him with a smile and leave your hand out as he puts the 2 bills back in his pocket and walks to the table to sit down and have dinner. 5 hours later, after you cried, begged, and sat in the corner mad, sad, with a screwed up face, Uncle Junie says goodbye to everyone and walks out the door. Finally, your grandpa, or some other adult, walks past you, looks down at you, and says, "Huh, that'll learn you to appreciate a gift and just be thankful, because he didn't have to give you nothing. And now you've got just that, nothing." As God is doing his work, protecting you, healing you and your family, providing for you, and setting up something in the future to take care of you, don't be spoiled and don't mess yourself up. When God was looking to bless you, I'm sure the next time Uncle Junie visited your home, he found you thankful for whatever you received. This is Elder D.T. Stanley, interim pastor for Harvest Time Worship Center. I'll speak to you again next week. God bless.